All right, we are recording. Welcome to Recording with Zoom. My name is Frank Marfi.
I'm Marcia.
All right. A lot of you, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for joining us. And if you're watching this through YouTube, we hope that you find this session helpful. And a very meta idea is that we are recording a session on how to record. So enjoy. Okay. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint. All right. So today we're going to learn about recording with Zoom. One of the things is you do need a pro account. Pro account is not terribly expensive. We do believe that the college will be funding these pro accounts, but for the time being, you might have to be paying this yourself if you want to be able to record, or like in the previous session, being able to do breakout groups. So why would you want to record a class? And well, for one, it lets your students be present so they don't have to always be worried about writing down things. And if their internet cuts out, and as a lot of us are experiencing, that internet can be kind of capricious. If they lose 5 minutes, that might have been the precious 5 minutes that they needed. So having ability to record makes a big difference. And then also watching on Zoom is not the same as being in person. So it is easy to kind of tune out and zone out. And at least it's this does let them go and review something that might have been critical that they might have just accidentally tuned out on. A couple of
I do hear people say, well, I'd never recorded my live in-person session, so why record Zoom? And my only pushback is just with internet bandwidth and potentially getting kicked off, or you know how sometimes it freezes for 30 seconds or 20 seconds and then it comes back, but you lost that. Our students are dealing with a lot of those issues, so recording allows them to go back and revisit that. But there are cons. Go ahead, Frank.
So they might not want to attend class. That's something that they might not want to attend class, although one could push back that the same thing happens even in regular classes too. They're just too busy, or they don't think they're getting any value from what they're getting. So people, if they don't want to come to class, they will find excuses to not come to class. And I don't record my lectures, so I'm not going to record my online lectures. Going back to what Marcia said, in this new environment, even if you're present for the whole class, you might have an internet connection, or maybe in your area the internet goes out, or you have a bandwidth problem for 5 minutes, and that was the critical part. And the person did all their due diligence to be the class, but they just cannot. They just something happened, and that they lost those precious minutes. Well, now they've lost their class. So I would argue is that having a recording does provide a safety net for those type of experiences. Things happen. So I'm in the pro camp where it's actually helpful to record classes.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two ways to record on Zoom, and this is something you really want to think about carefully. So with a pro account, you can get 100 megabytes of storage for free. You can send your students a password protected link for them to watch. And if you set up multiple streams to record it, you can also see those being simultaneously if the recording's in the cloud. Locally, the students can also, if you set it up in your account, you can also let them record on their own computer if they want. You can also record on your own hard drive. There are no storage limits other than the fact that your hard disk does have a finite capacity. So if you decide to record all your Zoom lectures on your computer, by the end of the semester, you will not have to worry about having free space in your hard drive because it'll be gone.
Hey, Frank.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Hey, Paul, do you mind muting? We're getting just a little bit of feedback. Frank, you didn't make me a co-host, so I can't do it.
I am so sorry. I thought I did. Oh, it's because you left at temporary point, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I forgot about that because I made you one. At least I think. Okay. You have powers now. Congrats. Boom.
Okay. Good job. Thanks, Paul.
So one of the things is there's no storage limits other than your hard drive. So if you record everything locally, you will feel great sadness by the end of the semester. Just saying. because it will slowly burn up your hard drive. Video files are big. What's kind of nice, however, about locally is that what you can do is download it from Zoom and then upload it to the Google Drive in Maricopa. And then you can also put it onto YouTube. And these are ways to put it up in the cloud where you're not worried about the cloud not being the Zoom cloud, but for example, putting it up on YouTube or putting it up in the Google Drive from Maricopa. We do not have such space limits. At some point, might get an Instagram that you need to clear up some space, but it will never be at the same case of Zoom, which says, sorry, you're out of space. There are a ton of settings that can be tweaked. So this is from the Pro account, and what it is you're going into this settings and you're going into recording. And one of them is that the host can give participants permission to record locally. So if a student wants to record locally a particular portion of the lecture, they can do that. There are a lot of options of what you can do with regard to recording. So again, this is mostly for your reference that when you're starting to go through, it's like, what do I click? Because there's so many options, it sometimes can be a little bit on the overwhelming side because they're all mixed together. Like when you look at breakout rooms, there are certain options that control breakout rooms. And then there are other options that can control recording. So when you look at all these things, like when you look at them all at once, like, gee, there's so much, I don't know what to pick. So in these sessions, we've kind of broken out, like, here are the ones that you want to look at when you want to make adjustments for your own personal recording. One of them is recording the active speaker with the shared screen, which is what's happening right now. That's the default. And what it is whoever's speaking is the one who's getting their screen recorded and their voice recorded as well. But if you have students that are unmuted and they're in the middle of a very noisy zone, guess who's being recorded with their screen? It's not you. So one option is to just mute all your students, but usually it's a nicer way to ask them to mute themselves rather than just you clicking and saying, sorry, you are the weakest link. That's my version of it.
But some people still can figure out how to unmute themselves, and then now you're dealing with that versus just teaching. So
yeah. There is a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning of these courses or at the beginning of the transition when we were doing this in spring, like how does this actually work? They eventually catch on. It is also helpful to save those chat messages from the meeting and webinar. And I remember, I wouldn't say remember because this is the first time all of you are doing this. One thing to note is that when you're saving the chat messages, it's the ones that are directed to everyone. Anything that's a private chat message will not be recorded as part of this chat stream. Now, these are my own personal ones. I like having a timestamp in the recording so we know what time it was. I do like having the participants' names in the recording. That is something that people have different thoughts about, which is on the next slide. And then also to record the thumbnails when sharing so you know who was the speaker at that particular point.
Yeah, so I had a question about that. If you have a recording and you make it a public, is there any issues with FERPA with have their names on there and stuff?
Well, one thing you can do is password protect the published recording. And that way only the people who are in that class know that password to access that recording. And that's one way around it because everyone in the class knows who the other person is. So I don't think that's a FERPA violation. However, you don't want people who are not in that class to have access to it. I think we just lost Paul. He'll be back, hopefully.
there's another workaround.
Yeah.
There was also the issue about having a sign-in sheet where students can't tell who's there and who's not and all that stuff. I'm just curious. I'm not really worried about it, but.
Another workaround would be to record them all separately. So if you look down on the 1, 2, 3rd box down here, it says record active speaker, gallery view, and shared screen separately. So what you could do is if you check that box, it's going to produce 3 video files. You could take the one that is, I mean, this is like now you're talking about editing and like this sucks, but it's a workaround. Take the active speaker file and put it with the shared screen file. And the only problem is you would still get, again, if somebody's in the background making noise, you would still get that potentially their picture, popping up with their name. But what you could do is take the audio from that, marry it to the video from your shared screen and publish that. And that would be a workaround that potentially should completely get rid of that problem.
And you can always turn off the participants' names if you want to be super careful.
Mm-hmm.
I think Paul's trying to come back in.
I got it.
Got him? Okay. So over here, so what it is I kind of take the perspective of if everyone's in the class, they already know each other's name because they've been introduced to each other at some point or they've been working together. And as long as I password protect the screen recording, I don't feel like it's a FERPA violation. So that's my take on it. Because the only people who know it are the people who are on that specific section. So I figure at that point, everyone knows everyone's name. And they can pretend to be anyone they want, by the way. Zoom lets you assume identities. I mean, if
Yeah,
you look,
that's another good point, is that you could make a statement or even put in your syllabus and say, if you prefer to not have your name shown, I mean, you could put your initials, you could whatever. That's another workaround.
mm-hmm. So the last part is it's nice to get email notifications when your cloud recording is available, rather than having to constantly check in and see whether it's done or not. It's interesting because sometimes the recording is available immediately, and sometimes I guess Zoom is busy, and it may take a couple hours after the class. So I find it helpful. Now remember, the email notification is sent to whichever account you use to set up Zoom. I guess if it's our college, you'll probably get it from your phoenixcollege.edu. But that being said, when I'm looking for an email notification, I'm looking at my private email because I set it up privately originally because of the delay in getting things set up at the college and institutional level. So that's just a little bit about, it's good to have that notification so you then know not to waste time looking when it's ready and when it's not. And this is actually what Marcia was talking about, which had to do with the active speaker, the gallery view, and the shared screen. So it does create 3 different files, which is both exciting and challenging at the same time. Because now you have to figure out how to merge 3 streams together and pick the parts that you like.
Well, and you could uncheck gallery view too, so that would just give you the active speaker and the shared screen. But the problem is still that you're going to have students talk and their picture is going to pop up. So if you didn't want any of their faces, your best bet would say just take the shared screen and marry the audio with it, which actually, now that I think about that, you could potentially check that box, uncheck active speaker and gallery view so you have shared screen, and then also check the one below it that says record an audio only file. That would work.
Yeah, you can check them. Well, you don't want to check them all because it's just a ton of files, but you got choices. So also you want to have the the chat stream as part of recorded video. I like saving the chat messages as well if it helps them. Trying to think, is there anything else that we want to talk about in this particular options? Nah. Okay. Now this is another part, which is when you're scheduling meetings. So notice right now we're under settings. We're going to go up to meetings now. So now this is the part where you are scheduling a meeting. So the settings is something that applies to every single recording that you have in Zoom. So it's kind of like it's working in the background. Now meetings is what you're actually going to be scheduling and applying to every meeting specifically, which inherits the settings from setting. So under meetings, it is your choice whether you want to record the meeting automatically or not. There are pros and cons. If you're scattered brain like me, I automatically record the meeting and trim what I don't want. Meaning like I forgot to push the record button. Shoot, now there goes the class. That wasn't awesome. However, the downside of that is you have to edit it because usually there's some dead time where people are coming to class, and so you have like a lot of what I call just nothingness as you're waiting, because usually you're going to be in your class about 5 minutes before it actually is supposed to begin. So you end up with a lot of dead time, and then people slowly coming in before you choose to start class.
How do you edit it? Do they give you editing software, or you have to use your own?
Use your own.
Okay,
I mean,
so
I
like
use
Camtasia or something.
Camtasia. I use MPEG Streamclip for ones where I don't want to spend too much time.
But most people probably won't have that, right?
MPEG Streamclip is free.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the most basic editing things, right? Because when you so if you download the MP4, You can trim the beginning and the end and then just export it back out again and you're done. And I usually will do that if I don't care. Now, Camtasia is something I care about more than I will actually spend the time editing it. But for the what I call the quick trim at the beginning and the quick trim at the end, MPEG Streamclip is good enough. So usually I will do the record the meeting automatically, but you might have reasons why you don't want to. Maybe you know that what's the lecture part is really going to be maybe 20 minutes in or something like that, or the part you really want to share. In that case, you would just manually turn on the video or the recording, which is what I actually will show in this PowerPoint. So if you decide to record the meeting automatically, you get two choices. You can either put it on your computer or you can put it in the cloud. This one shows how to do it in the cloud. If it's in their local computer, then it's just a matter of monitoring what file folder it's putting all those recordings into. I think that covers that basic idea. So steps to record, simply click the record button, record to the cloud. Make sure your settings are correct on the website. You don't want to start doing this and then changing settings in the middle because it won't apply. It only will apply before starting record. You click on the lower toolbar on Zoom. And at the end of class, you may want to end the recording and then talk. So yeah, you may choose to stop the recording and then start talking to students with specific issues. Remember, if you don't turn it off, it will just keep recording until you technically end and close the class down. During recording, once you have the recording going on, you have two buttons that appear in lieu. So originally you have a recording button. When you push that down, you have a pause button and a record button. You will also notice that up here, you see a little thing which says recording up in the cloud in the upper left corner, which also gives you another visual cue that recording is happening. So let's say you're done. Now these presentations were created with the same fake group as in the previous presentation. So you'll notice that there was the seagull that was there. There's Tony Stark. There's Vader, and there was Olaf. So they came back for another round of training because I didn't scare them off the first time. No, just kidding. So everyone had a contribution. So they had a conversation. The class was recorded. And when you're done, you would just simply click stop recording. It will ask you if you want to stop the recording, which is down here. You'd say stop the recording. It will stop the recording then, and then it actually will start processing that file and putting it into the cloud.
One quick comment. What you're looking at here is actually what we would consider speaker view or active speaker view. So back on those settings, that's the way it's going to come through when they access a recording.
Mm-hmm. So as it switches to the speakers as they're participating, it will actually show that change over as you see it. So now the question becomes okay, congratulations, you now have a recording. Where did it go? Well, if it's on your local computer, it will be in the file folder where that local recording is. If you chose the cloud, you have to go back into your Zoom account, click on recording, and if you did not receive a confirmation email, chances are you'll be getting something like it's pending and just wait. But after you do get the confirmation email, meaning that the file has processed, and if it's a longer lecture, it'll take longer. So it's usually, I would say the rule of thumb is it's usually about it's a little less than the time it actually the lecture was because part of it is already partially processed while you're talking. But over here, you'll see that after the pending is gone, it will actually turn into something where it tells you what the file size is, how many files were saved as a part of it. So for example, if you stop the recording and then you start it up again, it'll save it as separate files because it's going to be putting everything in the same meeting together. So it'll be different clips. And then what it is you have a choice of either share or more. If you want to share, which is what we're suggesting for option 1, what you do is you click on share, change the password because the password that Zoom comes up with is impossible to type in for any student. So if you want, you click edit, change the default password. You'll notice that the original password for this optional session here was @ PP, small p, small c, period. So good luck with that. So pick something easy enough, but at the same time, something that's not that easily guessed. I put math underscore 206. It met the requirements. Click save. And then what you'd want to do is right below it, you wanted to display the detailed information, copy the sharing information in clipboard, and then copy it. And it'll say it's copied. And it will take this information, which is how students will access the recordings after class. So like in this case, the live link would be this HTTPS URL address. And to unlock it, they would be using the password MAT underscore 206. And where to put it? Good practice would be however you normally communicate with students about how the meetings are posted. In the case of more, I just simply create an announcement as an inline text, and here you go. And then I give them the information of when it happened. And after you're all, you make a message, and then they have access to the class. So usually on the day of, I would say, unless something weird happened with the recording or was really a late class and it ended in the evening, I am able to post this pretty much the same day. And it will take everything that was recorded. And this is a live online where they can actually see the chat message and the recording at the same time. So I record this information and then click done, and that will close this window out. And that's how you do one way to at least say, or to share out a particular session.
I used to, in my more course, do a, you know how you can do an announcement that is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not offline, but basically an offline announcement where, like, I know I always saw Mariana do it where she did like holidays and she would say like Veterans Day or whatever. And so I would do on their Zoom links, and when they clicked on that, then it would say click here for the Zoom link, click here, or they could copy and paste it. That way they could go to the day that they had missed or wanted to see it again and see it that way too, instead of having to sift through and remember what date
That's
it was.
really nice. That's a really nice way. So you actually put it in the calendar directly rather than making your own message.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then that way they can find it. You don't have to add all this extra information, just simply the link to access it and the password. But then you'd want to use maybe a uniform password so they know what to do for that class. So what does that look like? So you might wonder, what does it look like for a student to do this? So what it is let's say the student did click on that link and they entered the password. This is what they would see. It looks very much like the class that was reconstructed. You'll see that the speaker view is on one side, and then the chat stream as it occurred is on the other side with timestamps that were associated with that class. And they can also download the video and class chat stream. The two files are downloaded. One of them is the video file and the other one is the chat. So one's a text file and one is an MP4. If it was done in separate clips, for example, you press stop and then you start it again, this little fast forward button right here will take him to the second clip where the next video starts. If you did it in one full session, it will take all the minutes that were involved. If you press stop and you start it again while you were doing this, then as you press fast forward, it'll go to the beginning of the next start point that you had began the next recording in the same class session. What's left? Really is not much left. Well, actually, there's a few things left. What am I saying? Okay, so the other option is, of course, to save this stuff locally. So if you do that, you click on more and you download all the files that are part of this. In the case of the session that I recorded, actually, there were two recordings that were done. The first one was more interesting in that it had the participants. It also had a chat. And the second one was just I guess, an epilogue. So the point being is they download all three files, and then the students can choose. And then students can, well, no, students can't do this. They can actually download locally recording, but for you, what you can do is then take these files that were downloaded, the MP4s, and you can either put it in YouTube or you can upload it to your Google Drive. And by doing so, you do not have to worry about running out of space, because you can always then delete the files after the fact. First of all, make sure that your files work and that they are playable before you do any deletion of it. The problem is that the space that they give you in the account does get used up pretty quickly. I'm trying to remember how many hours you can record before this problem starts to become an issue. I think I was usually able to get about 4 classes in that were
Yeah,
about.
I was gonna say I could do about 4.5 hours before I was almost maxed out.
Yeah, it's about, yeah, so about 4 classes before I started getting nasty grams from Zoom saying, sorry, you're running out of space. Maybe you want to delete a file. So if you're teaching, let's say 4 live online classes a day, you're going to be doing this every day. So one of the things is that's where the advantage of downloading, once you verified it works and you can put it on your Google Drive or YouTube, you don't have to then worry. Then you can actually end up deleting it. So download the files, verify that it works. And then if you want to delete, you just simply go back to more and you choose delete, and it will put it in the trash. If for some reason you accidentally deleted the wrong group of files, it doesn't mean it's all gone. It will be gone in 30 days, but it's not being counted against your quota of what you can actually have on your drive. So if you made a mistake, it's okay. You can undelete it and still, it's like when you in Windows Explorer, you put it in the trash and you can undo it. Or if it's, you can always undelete files. But chances are you won't make that error. Probably only once during the semester. And what else? Marcia, you want to do this one or have me keep going?
Sure. So one of the questions we always get is, so does Google or does Zoom do live closed captioning? And that's one of the main significant differences between Google Hangouts and Zoom is that Google, you can turn on live closed captioning. Zoom, you'll notice that there is a box that says you can, but really what it mainly does is it allows a third party software, or you assign somebody the closed captioning person and then they're typing. So it's not really convenient. I do know that that's something they're in the works of. So hopefully that will be fixed really soon or added. But in the meantime, there is a workaround, which I would have loved to have known about a few months ago, but that's okay. So in case you were unaware, you can actually turn on Google Captions when you are presenting for a Google slideshow. So if you go into Google Slides and you just make a blank Google slide. Oh, and wait, rewind. One thing we discovered last night as we were figuring this out was that it does not work in Firefox. So you have to be in Chrome in order for this to work. So it doesn't work in Firefox, doesn't work in other browsers. So you got to have Chrome open. So you open a slide in Google, it could be a blank one. You hit the present button that you can see right there. Okay, you can go to the next one. Oh, rewind. Sorry. So you're in Zoom. You're going to share your Google slide that's now open on your computer, right? So now you're sharing and all your participants are looking at your Zoom browser that's inside of Chrome. Then you hit present. Okay, next one. And now what you're going to do is turn on the closed captions there. So you can see it's highlighted in yellow where it says CC captions. Kind of cool. There's even a text position, text size, large, small, medium, extra large, etc. Right there. Okay. So here's the only tricky thing is that if you have chosen in Zoom to only record your Google Chrome window, what's going to happen is that it's only going to be, you're only going to be sharing that. So your students aren't going to be able to see your PowerPoint, your website, etc. anymore. So the workaround is that you're actually going to want to choose to record your desktop. Now, if you attended the Zoom Basics 2 training, we talked about how sometimes you might not want to share your desktop. And the reason being is that if you have notifications turned on, like a lot of people have little email blurbs that are pushed to their desktop, or you get a notification that says you need to update Microsoft Office or whatever weird stuff. Or if you have your text messages connected, you can sometimes get a text message. So be careful when sharing your desktop. Let me just preface it by saying that. But you can do your live closed captions if you start by sharing your desktop. So what you would do is you would share your desktop, you would have your Google slide underneath of whatever else you want to share. So you can see, Frank, will you just zoom in on that bottom right hand for me?
Absolutely. Let's take a look how we can do that.
I
Guess we
think you
could
should be
try
able
that.
to click it and then zoom in.
Hope. That did not work. Try again.
But we got to make it so we can see it though.
Yeah. Need to work on that a little. We'll make it work. One moment, please.
So if you have your blank Google slide, and again, nothing has to be on your Google slide, you're just basically going to use that to take the audio that it hears and make it to captions. Yeah, that's better. So if you look here, you can see that Frank's got that Google Slides. Frank, will you just point to that real quick underneath with your cursor, your mouse? The Google Slides tab up at the top. So you can see there that he's got that Google slide underneath, and then he's got Desmos on top of it. Okay, now show us the other one there on the right. And so what happens is students aren't really seeing your Google slide, right? You're just kind of positioning your windows so that there's a little bit of overlap down at the bottom, and you can see that right there is doing live closed caption with what Frank is saying, which is amazing, great. And it will even record it because remember, you're recording the shared view. So this is like a win on so many levels. The only not so great thing is there's not going to be any punctuation. It's going to be very similar to an auto closed captioning that YouTube offers. So it's decent. It definitely auto corrects and things like that, misspellings. But it's not going to be perfect. So know that.
It's also part of the video, right? It's not a text reader can't read it, or a screen reader. Right?
Screen reader can't read it, right? So again, the workaround, the really great workaround for closed captioning would be to download your files and upload to Zoom, right? James, you would agree?
Download and then upload to YouTube, you mean?
Yeah, isn't that what I said?
You said upload to Zoom, I think. But yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Upload to YouTube.
It's really hard to hear you. Did you like go in the other room?
Oh, sorry, I moved the mic. Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Hi, James.
We can hear you now.
Okay, sorry.
So, I mean, obviously, we don't usually recommend auto closed captioning being your final stopping place, but at the same time, trying to edit an hour-and-a-half long class in closed caption, I've done it before, and it's probably the worst thing ever. So.
Yep.
So,
Marcia, yeah, I know I missed a few things here trying to get set up, but finally. So I do most of my work on my iPad. You know, I'm doing a screen share. So you're saying from a recording standpoint, there was an option that I had to select. I might have missed that, so that it'll capture what I'm doing on my iPad most of the time.
it will default do the shared screen with the active speaker. That's your default. You can tell it to do the shared screen, the gallery view, and the active speaker, which will be 3 separate files. But honestly, for what you want it for, I think the default is probably fine.
Oh, okay, good.
And it will totally record you writing on the iPad. Just keep in mind, it will also be recording your face. So a lot of times when you're holding your iPad, you know, and you're writing and whatnot, it tends to be a little, you know, furrowy brow and whatnot. And just know that they're going to be able to see that, which not that you're going to necessarily change that, but just be aware.
Oh, so they see both views then?
Your camera on your iPad will still be recording you. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Too
Now,
bad.
there is a workaround so that doesn't happen, and that is you can connect, if you connect your iPad separately or connect it through AirPlay, then what will happen is if you connect it through AirPlay and you're on a desktop that has a camera, my desktop camera will be picking me up while I'm writing, and that will be my shared screen. So that's one workaround. Another workaround is to not join the audio on your iPad and keep the audio on your computer. And then basically it's going to record the active speaker with my shared screen. So that's the other workaround. But honestly, the first way that I told you would be way better. And again, that was in, Paul, I don't think, were you in recording or whiteboarding with us yesterday, Zoom Basics 2?
No, no.
Okay. That might be one that you might want to come to, and we talk a lot about what settings you want to have on there. And then I know Diane and Patsy did one on Notability, Good Notes. What was the other one, Frank?
OneNote, I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, so I've been using Notability for 6-7 years now. So, and that's when I'm in my iPad, you know, I'm doing a share screen, you know, I sign on my iPad like another device or something. And then, you know, then I share screen from my iPad, and that, you know, works great for me. And that's, but anyway, so yeah. I'm used to that.
Cool. What else we got, Frank?
So one of the things is like in the case of here, notice that what was being run on the top of it, which was the Desmo screen, is completely independent of what the Google slide is. The Google slide in the back is just something that is using the microphone to pick up whatever you say to it. So like in my case, I just simply fired up a Desmos app and I had the Google slide in the background, and I just started speaking to the computer. Since the microphone's on, it's just simply taking whatever I'm saying and putting it in the bottom. So that was part of that reason for that whole rearrangement that you see here. One of the things is just because the default for Google Slides is small, it is very hard to see what the actual captioning is in its default state. And the other part, which we said a little earlier, is it doesn't work, at least that we know of, it does not work for any other browser except Chrome. So it's almost like you're creating your own Chrome independent tab where all you need really is a simple slide. I just called it Le Caption, which is awesomeness, one word at a time.
One other thing that I could see throwing some people for a loop, once you hit that present button, it's very possible again that it's going to jump into full screen. So don't panic, because obviously if you go into full screen, it's not going to let you access Desmos and put that window on top of it. So you'll want to hit the escape button so that you get back into it not taking over.
Actually takes a little more than the escape, because if you do escape in some cases, it will actually stop it. So once you're in that mode, CC to activate the captioning, and then shrink it down to exit full screen. So this will actually turn it back into a window that you can then drag around on the screen to put below the actual window that you care about. And that's what this will do. Because if you escape in some cases, what it will do is it will stop the captioning. So you're kind of back to square one. And then once you actually have it, change the adjust the text size to large. So in here, you would under text, you go text size large, and then just choose large. And that is usually, that's big enough for it to then, what you see here is about the size you get, which is big enough. And it'll do one line at a time. As you say it, it will come out. And now, in terms of math, it's not perfect. It's only as good as YouTube is, which is always an interesting thing, but it should be able to catch most of your conversation. And that's kind of where I mean, this is the prepared part of what we had. Now we just, you guys have the floor. What questions do you have?
What time is happy hour?
Well, that's in 4 minutes. At 4 o'clock, happy hour starts promptly. No, I'm just kidding. But we did record all of this for especially, which is actually one of the, Paul, you actually illustrated a wonderful point that we were making earlier. Why should you record a classroom session? Because you had technical difficulties and you wanted to be here. So this kind of illustrates the point that we were talking about earlier. Like sometimes students have technical difficulties and they miss out in critical periods of the class lecture or classroom activities, and they missed out. So at least this gives them a way to look back at what actually they were, the gap that they have because of technical difficulties.
Right. Yeah. No. And that's, you know, I typically, you know, I do everything on my iPad, you know, and I upload that. Everything I write down in class, you know, I capture it and then I upload it and put it into more, so they see everything that I've written in class. But yeah, this recording component would be, you know, an added nice thing that I would like to, you know, capture and make available too. So,
And it's exactly for this reason, is because computers are capricious, and sometimes you lose connectivity at the worst possible moment.
oh
So
yeah,
if you guys are wondering, from this whole recording session, we're kind of doing that. After the Zoom is done, we're going to download the files, trim them, and then put it back up. We do not have the technical tools to make this a very fancy edit. It'll be a basic edit of, okay, this is when the thing started and this is when it ended. So we are hoping that you found all these ideas helpful, and that, again, please let us know if you have any questions. We're in this together. And we hope that you found this session on recording and also in how do you do closed captioning helpful. Marcia, do you want to add anything?
Nope. We're good.
All right, we are gonna call this, we are gonna make this a wrap, and we all wish you a great weekend.